So the thing I want to talk to you today about is how do you build a business model in open source, or a way to do it that is working for us and could be expanded and could be replicated for the cloud. So since I'm bold, I went for the business model for the cloud. So first, a couple of caveats about this. And the first one is that I'm speaking to a lot of people that come up to me and say, hey, I have this open source project, it's going to be big. I want to make a big business out of it. And that has, some of the things you need to think about are, well, not every open source project can be a business and can be a phenomenal open source project, but it's a different thing to make money out of a business. And you have to be very careful first that your open project can actually become big. So you need, for the things to work in open source, you need a big community. And so the only way to get a big community is to have a big market you're addressing. So your audience needs to be large, because if you're solving a niche, then your community is not going to be big enough, and therefore you cannot build a business. So things that have worked in the past are implementation of open standards, implementation of things like SQL or big markets. And that gives you maybe a big open source project, but then you need to look at who you're competing with. And usually you're competing with closed, and you have to be very careful if there is a price cushion, because you will always be considered cheap because you're open source. And that's part of nature. And if your competitor is pricing the product like RIM is doing for things like we do, which is mobile synchronization, mobile email, then you have room to start at this price, which is still pretty high. But if you go into a market where the competitor is giving away your stuff for free, then it is very, very hard, if not impossible, because at the end, it is very hard to scale a business around support and services. So if you want to go into licensing, and scale a business and make it big and make your venture capitalist happy, you need to have an open source project that can scale to become a business. Otherwise, you just spend so much time of your life trying to raise money, you're probably not going to make it. And even if you make it, then it's hard to make a business out of it. This is actually a picture that's very recent, unfortunately. And so the idea that I've been pushing is something I call honest dual licensing. So it is an idea of having two separate communities to build a business. So one of the common things for commercial open source project, at least initially, was to create an open source project, called the Community Edition, and then add a few features on top, maybe some features on top, and make it Enterprise Edition, and try to make money on that. The issue you have with this is that you are upselling your community. So you have a community, and then you hold back features to give it to some same people. And what this works, has been proven to work, but it creates an enormous tension with your community. So it might work from a business side, but then you might be creating a lot of trouble for yourself down the road. Every feature that comes into the product, you need to decide if it goes open source, and your community is going to scream open source, open, or if it goes into the commercial side, and your VC, your salespeople will say, no, closed. So eventually, what happens is that you have to make money, and somebody's paying your salary, so you're going to start closing feature one after the other. And that creates tension with your community. And what happens is that you lose your community. Maybe you don't lose everyone. You're going to lose just the best. The best part of your community is going to fork your project, create a separate project, and compete with you, which doesn't kill you because you have the branding, you built the project, but you lost the best part of your community, the people that really are made your project big. And that is happening for SQL companies, happening for ERP companies. If you upsell your community, if you sell something to your community, you have to think about that every day. You're going to kill your own community. So our suggestion, my suggestion in particular, is do not upsell your community. Make sure that you have one community that uses your open source project and another community that uses your commercial product. Never mix the two. you'll create friction, you're going to lose your community. And a lot of people don't think what we're doing makes sense because we're losing a lot of money on the table, but I'd rather lose a lot of money and leave a lot of money on the table to just make sure that the community stays happy. And this has been working for us for a while. The other element, and in the assumption I want to mention today, is if you're thinking about a business model today, you need to think about the cloud. If you don't think about the cloud, then you're probably 10 years too late. If you are building a business today, 5 years from now, most of the business is going to be on the cloud. Everything is moving there, from the Google Docs to ERPs to CRM, and a lot of people tell me, this is never going to happen because enterprises really want to keep their data, their important data, close to them. And this is Europe. I'm Italian. I know this place fairly well. We tend to want to keep their data into our data centers. We don't put it out. But the reality is that the number one cloud service out there is Salesforce.com, and you're putting your customers on their servers, which are the number one thing. And so if that's the trend, everything is going to the cloud, you need to come up with a business model that includes open source and the cloud. And the reason why you need to do it is that because open source is the best way to foster innovation, to create better software. And the business model, to me, has three elements. One is using open source, picking the right license, and keep being honest with your community, so separating community of people that buy from community of people that contribute. The second thing is finding a market, an audience for your open source project. And the third one is finding a market for your commercial product, which I would put in the cloud. So the big distinction that I make for this business model is you do an open source project deployed, and you do a commercial project, or you sell a license for something that is in the cloud. So you separate it to community. And the idea is that first you need open source. And I use these conferences because I've been in open source since doing things in the late 80s. It's been a long way, but I finally made it. Actually, Google made it for me, so I didn't do much, to get open source even in mobile. And so now that we conquer mobile, there is no other market to conquer. I think we won. And there is no way you can build software as good as in open source. You need a community. And all these things, I think, is year after year are becoming more and more relevant. There is one thing that you need to pick if you do open source, and that thing is the license. I'm just tired of talking about licenses, and I'm happy that nobody's talking about it anymore. But if I need to pick a license today, I would go with AGPL. And if you're familiar with GPL, you might be familiar with AGPL. The idea behind AGPL is that it protects you if you offer your product and someone uses it in the cloud. So GPL doesn't protect you, which is the copyleft doesn't trigger. If you take a GPL project, put it in the cloud, and make changes to it, you don't have to contribute back. It's called the ASP loophole. AGPL covers that and says that distribution of software as a service is distribution of software. If you make a change, you give it back. So if you're thinking about any software today, that software is probably going to be in the cloud. If you're thinking about GPL, not choosing a GPL, it's a big mistake because you're missing the copyleft of people that will run your software as a service down the road. And so you should protect yourself and your community to make sure that the contribution comes back. And the idea of open source has always been that the contribution comes back, there is a community, and if you don't pick the right license, people might take advantage of it. Second thing is, so first open source, second thing, a market for a community edition. I'm going to borrow Martin Mikush words about open source, and he, is a friend and is an advisor for Funambol. He always said that there are two people or two companies that you are going to work with, and they have two difference, actually one difference. They either have time or they have money. And so if they have time, usually they don't have money. And if they have money, they usually don't have time. So your market for your community edition should be people that have time to download a product, tinker with it, install on their servers. You know, might be surfers, but I wish. It's just people that have the time to take your software and deploy it at home, deploy it inside the enterprise. They have the need to keep the code there. They have the means to look inside the code. That is a group of people that will create your community and will get benefit by having the software there. They liked it, and they will not buy it anyway because they don't have money. And if they don't have money, doesn't make any sense to go after them. Now, once you have this community and you have a deployed version where people can tinker with, then you need to create a revenue model. And to me, you go after the people who have money and they don't have time. And today, if you don't have money, you go for a cloud service. It's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to ask the IT manager. You just click on a button, buy, and you have it on the cloud. And those are the people that you should sell to. And you can do it in many ways. You can do a subscription model, which is a per user per month. You can do a freemium model, and you have them to pay for storage or additional features. You can do advertising based, so it could be consumers or enterprise. It could be run by you, so you run your own cloud, or you sell it to service providers, ISPs, carriers. They will run it for you, and that increases your scale. So the Funambol case, this is Open Office moving things around. Funambol is my company, and this might be the first audience I speak to that knows the meaning of the word Funambol. So I'm pretty happy about that. And it means tightrope walker. And it's the balance between being open source, having a community, giving stuff away for free, and making money on the other side. So we built it with that concept in mind. And it's based on open source. It's a AGPL license. We pushed AGPL into the OSI, got it approved. We've been behind it for a while. We have a community edition product, which is used by small and medium enterprises, so 10, 15 people that want mobile email, contact synchronization, calendar synchronization across all devices they have. It works with Symbian, BlackBerry, Windows Mobile, iPhone, Android. So they download the server, they plug in the connector to Exchange, Domino, Zimbra, and they just use it. And there's no money exchanged. If they want support from us, we are not going to sell it to them. We do not support them. We're going to call one of our partners around the world. They'll come, make money, configure, install, add, fix, make it work on that BlackBerry, fix that Android thingy that wasn't working, and is per country, per carrier around the world. That gives us the ability to support email, contacts, calendar, rich media across billions of devices. It's not only mobile phones, it's smartphones, it's tablets, it's going into TV. We have a customer which is a German car manufacturer, so we're getting data into those devices, which show connected devices is the way we're going, and the community works very well. Now, if instead of having 15, 30 people, you want to serve 15, 30 million people, then you need another product, and you don't have time, and so you buy our carrier edition. So we have a commercial version that we sell to mobile operators, device manufacturers, and portals from America Online to Vodacom, and we're launching 10 carriers this quarter. So this is the idea, is combination of open source, AGPL, one version, which is your community edition that you deploy and people can use it. They'll yell at you. I mean, I was here before the speaking today, and there was someone say, you're not serving the market between 30 people and 15 million. And you're wasting, it's a big market, and I don't care because the business works very well on the high end, and on the low end, that generates the community. People are very happy. We have no forks, no thread, no nothing. And maybe I'm missing a market, but I kept the community honest, and I built a business that actually is able to scale on the carriers. We have millions of users, and it works very well. So the company is growing, and the community is very happy. And I think this can be replicated. It can be easily applied to a lot of other markets, from the CRM to the ERP to anything you might think of today that is going into the cloud. If you have your product, a version you can put deployed and give it away in open source, you can create a community of people that want to tinker with that, but on the other side, you can make money on the cloud. And clearly, if you do it and it doesn't work, it's not my fault. So don't come asking for it. So this is my contacts. Thanks for having me. It was a great excuse for me to be in Europe this week. Thank you.